1970s, there was a lot of research done on what's going on in the brain when people meditate. And the TM movement, transcendental meditation, those people did a ton of studies. The Menninger Clinic did a lot of studies, and some other places did too. But by the middle of the 1970s, they knew a lot about what the brain does in meditation, and they're still finding out more today now that they have different ways of creating images of the brain. They were mostly looking at brainwave patterns, like on a polygraph, on an EEG in the 70s. Now they can have MRIs and things like that, where they can see other things about the brain. So I know you guys have probably, most of you, heard me talk about some of this or read some of this before, but I want to go over the different brainwave patterns a little bit so that we're all kind of on the same page, because they relate really strongly to this also. When you are in your average daily walking around state, you're in a beta brainwave pattern, which is above 13 cycles per second. All day long, your brain is, the neurons in your brain are communicating with each other. And the electrical energy that happens when you do that creates these standing waves in your brain, called brain waves. So the higher ones are called beta brain waves. There's actually a higher one than that called gamma, and most of you know that I've recently created this gamma compassion soundtrack based on this research recently done on these Tibetan Buddhist monks. Anybody in here that doesn't know about that? I'll talk about that a little bit later. But for now, let's just talk about beta brainwaves as being the highest. When you get into the extreme high levels of beta, you feel anxious, and you really feel separate. You're as far away from this as you could possibly get. You feel very much feelings of dis-ease, disharmony, separation. You're much more likely to be afraid or depressed or disconnected from yourself even, and certainly from other people. As the brainwaves slow down and you get into the lower part of beta, your mind becomes a lot more focused, and you can do, a lot of analytical, cognitive thinking, put different ideas together, that sort of a thing. Do math problems, converse with people, all this sort of thing. But if your brainwaves slow a little bit more and they go down below 13, you get into an alpha brainwave pattern, which is 8 to 13 cycles per second. And alpha is one where your mind becomes much more focused. You really get drawn into whatever you're doing. Those of you who have used Quietude, the soundtrack we give you when you start the program, to read or study or something like that, you've experienced this, because it just really pulls you into whatever you're doing. And those times when you're reading a book, and you totally block out the rest of the world and you're totally absorbed in the book, you're in an alpha state. The same thing when you're watching a movie or a play or something like that. You've just blocked everything out. You're in an alpha brainwave pattern. Alpha is also the brainwave pattern you're in when you're just falling asleep at night, but you're not quite asleep. Or you're just waking up in the morning, but you're not quite awake. You're not gone. You're not unconscious, but you're not quite awake. It's that little twilight state in between. And alpha is also the brainwave pattern of meditation. Almost all meditation is happening in an alpha state when people are doing this focusing that I described, where they're focusing on their breath or a mantra or whatever. They're going into an alpha brainwave state. Alpha is also associated very strongly with joy and peace, those kinds of feelings. Also in alpha, people begin to have much greater feelings of connection and ease and relaxation. In alpha or in beta, especially the high part of beta, people are going to fight or flight. When people lose their temper or they feel like I'm going to run away, that sort of a thing. That's a manifestation of a beta brainwave pattern. But when you get down into alpha, you begin to develop what Dr. Herbert Benson at Harvard Medical School called the relaxation response, which was his term to describe the opposite of the fight or flight response. And so you become more focused, you become more happy, you become more joyful, more peaceful, you feel more connected to things. And then